In studio on a Friday is our friend Tony Botello of Tony'sKansasCity.com. If you want the skinny on what's actually happening in this town, there's your news source. Good morning, Tony. What's up, brother?
Good morning, Pete. Just making it back from store, getting the what is the bread and the milk and the eggs.
The eggs.
Just me. I'm not a dad. I don't have the dad jokes, but like I'm about the same age. Just where everybody's just looking towards the skies, like the bread, like the little internet meme.
I know a guy like you who works from his basement really has to make sure you're buttoned down for the next few days, right?
Yeah, that's exactly
right.
The
basement blogger Tony Botello.
I'm not going out for coffee, so it all has to be here.
Is that what you do to get out of the house? Because it's got to be weird when you're working from home all day, is it not?
I do, but I try not to be that guy that like bothers baristas. Like
I'd
rather
looking for conversation.
Yeah, I'd rather deal with like the male barista. Like, yeah, the quick trip is enough. Like, here's my lottery ticket, here's my coffee, thank you. Like that's about my human interaction. That's about all I need.
Of course, that's why we got to get him into the studio every few weeks, because I got to get you out into civilized society once in a while. You know,
this is true. I need an excuse to shower.
All right. I'll tell you what, we're only a couple of days into the new year, and a lot was made at the end of last year on Kansas City's homicide rate coming down about 20%. What was missed in that data, as you well know, is that non-fatal shootings were actually up, which tells me the criminals just need to get their eyes checked or something. That's all that tells me, and we're off to a bad start here in 2025, right?
That's exactly right. Great, you guys had great New Year's content. Patrick Tuohy came in. Now I talked to Tuohy, and I had hoped that his column. He did a really great column, making the exact same point. Shootings were up last year, so there really wasn't much to brag about. But in the past, there was a triple shooting last night that I put up on the blog early in the morning. 2 juveniles, 1 adult killed, and just this has been a really violent week so far. I think it started off with. It was like almost like Pulp Fiction. Earl's Premier Restaurant is over between, they say between Brookside and Eastside, robbed in like a Pulp Fiction scene. Somebody is a stick up, they punch one of the customers, but that was, thankfully nobody was killed. But yeah, you've had just a flurry, I think in the past 24 hours, at least 2 double shootings and a couple of more fatal shootings. So it's been an intensely violent week this week.
It has, and this is obviously, the time of year when you think that you will not have a lot of these, just driven by the weather, right? I mean, usually your homicides and just your crime in general will increase as the weather gets better. And we're sitting here late December, early January, and things are off to an awful start. So what do you think the broader conversation needs to be around, let's say, outgoing prosecutor Jean Peters Baker, and now, of course, you've got Melissa Johnson, who was Quentin Lucas's pick, starting as prosecutor. Are you optimistic on her?
I'd like to be. And I think... for my readers, I kind of always want to emphasize, like, we have to wait and see what she's going to do. And I think a lot of people are frustrated. I noticed Mayor Q getting a lot of pushback this morning when he's talking about homicides from his followers. But, I think people who are critical, and rightfully so, they're not in the wrong to be critical, but there's hearing what Melissa Johnson has to say and not really that excited. There's an emphasis on, it's great. That's fine that she's the first black female, but that's not the mood that people are in. We're not really, as a city, not in the mood to celebrate,
Well, who cares? Because her opponent was a black woman, too.
Exactly.
I mean, either way, you were getting a black woman, right?
Exactly.
A Republican or a Democrat.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that's I think people who watch it closely are saying that. But, yeah, that advancement and progress, fine, but it's not something that we're in the mood to hear, I don't think, from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I listen. I hope for her sake that she does a great job, because the city desperately needs it, right? I mean, you're talking about lives on the line. So with Jean leaving, what is her legacy?
I think, and people often get this confused. I don't think she's a horrible person. Everybody knows her heart is in the right place. But we have to be honest about politics and about votes. She could not run for dog catcher. And that's just a fact. She, at one time, was a great hope for the Democratic Party. People thought of her as, hey, maybe this lady could be governor. Maybe we could use her at a congressional or a statewide level at least. And that was a hope for her a couple of years ago. Right now, she is moving out of town from what we read from a Star article earlier, and she is not a viable candidate. So that's the politics of it. I try as much fun it is. I'll gossip about Brittany Mahomes all day, but like this is a lady with a serious job, a public official, law enforcement official, and I don't want to go into like people who have personal animosity, and maybe rightfully so because of her anti-law enforcement stats. But let's just look at the politics of it, and she's not running for anything in any near future year.
Well, I mean, it's not political to say that she was awful at her job.
Right.
I mean, she was awful at her job, and that's not personal. That's just a fact, right? I mean, and the Kansas City Star will carry her water all day and say, well, look at her clearance rate. Well, if you only take certain cases, your clearance rate is going to be pretty good, Tony. I mean, if I only ask one girl on a date and she says yes, my success rate is 100%. If I ask 10 girls on a date and one says yes, my success rate is 10%. Either way, I've got a girlfriend, but my success rate is very different. She uses that clearance rate, and it's such a BS cop-out, and the Star allows her to get away with it because her guy, Mike Manser, who you know, who's her media guy, used to work at the Kansas City Star. It's incest.
Yeah, this is true. And I think in Kansas City, we're a big city with a small town vibe. Everybody knows each other. Everybody talks to each other. So these differences with people get harder to make, which is a skill that you have, Pete. I mean, you talk to Mayor Q every week, but you still hold him accountable. Not everybody can do that.
Yeah, well, I will say I got to give him credit for coming on every week, too.
Right.
Because I would listen, there's two people I can't get on in this town on the show. One's Frank White, and one is Jean Peters Baker.
Wow.
But she runs over to B.C. She runs over there. They'll kiss her ass all day. Trust me, they will. They love that, woke white lady nonsense, but I ain't going for it here because it's getting people killed in the urban core. And the people that are sympathetic to her aren't dealing with what the urban core is dealing with right now. And not that I am. I'm not saying I live there. I don't. But I at least care enough to realize this is not rocket science. You have a soft-on-crime approach, you're going to get people killed, and it's going to happen not in Leawood or Prairie Village. I know she doesn't oversee those places, but you get the point. It's going to happen in the urban core.
Yeah, no, that's true.
So take me through Frank White. Sorry, now I'm taking over your. I'm supposed to make you shine here, Tony, but you get me all worked up. Okay?
That's my job. That's my gig. That's what I do. That's my jam. I'm going through headlines, and I'm hoping that people have. I hope I impassion people as much as you get worked up about this.
You do that every day for me. All right, Frank White. Speaking of him, what's his future?
It is not going to be a good year for him. His critics will call him out, say, "Oh, it's all done. He might as well resign." He's pulled himself out of worse jams than this, but he has a recall coming up. If you really pay attention,
you think they're going to get that on the ballot?
I think it's a fight, and here's the funny part about the fight: if you're the kind of jerk like I am that watches the legislature on New Year's Eve, you will see that their last meeting of the year was really tough, where the legislature not only cut his budget, but tried to approach an angle to where they could maybe convince the county councilor out of defending any recall. And so if you really get into it, like Tony does and like the people who read my blog do, you'll look at Frank White's campaign finance reports and realize in October he only has about $2,000 in the bank. Not a lot of money to defend against a group that's going to take him on, which are the heavies, who people hate it when I say this. I like it. It's a good analogy. They have more money than God. And
the heavies are the construction folks in town.
The heavy constructors, they still are bitter about the stadium deal. That was
because they wanted that, right?
Yes, they were behind it. They put a ton of money and millions of money to it, and these are not the kind of people who are like, "Oh no, we'll just wait till next election." No, Bridget Williams is on record. She did an interview with Fox 4. Send a quick quote their way. She is fully in support of this recall.
Isn't her brother kind of running the recall effort or something?
Or brother-in-law, so I don't know.
Brother-in-law who's over in Lawrence or something.
That's right. So they have people on it. They have the support of their leader for it. So they're not taking it lightly. We had talked about the recall going into summer. I was a little embarrassed. It didn't take hold right away. But by the time the election was there, they were at the recall collecting. They were at the election offices and the ballot locations getting signatures.
Yeah, well, I think about that story, and I just don't know, because I think the deadline's mid-January to get the votes that they need, and they still need thousands of signatures, They still need a lot.
Well, this is what's funny. Jackson County, my insiders always tell me it is a first-class chartered county. And if you check the charter, it is very much an interpretation. That's why the legislature was they're so adamant about pulling that county councilor support. Everything at the county is a court fight. And so as far as deadlines and what petitions are valid, what ballot initiatives are valid, it is always a fight that's going to go to the legislature, that's going to go to a court. Somebody needs defense. $2,000 is not a lot to defend yourself. The heavies.
Do you think he could resign rather than get recalled?
I think if it comes to it, if it looks like that would be a dignified way out of it, and that's what people are saying right now. Like, look for him to resign, look for him to maybe avoid embarrassment, say, hey, during this budget process, I don't want to guess anybody's motives, but a couple of times he say, hey, I have personal stuff that came up. So if he bows out, he's not a spring chicken. If he bows out and says, hey, forget this, I did my job, see you guys, it's not something that we should be surprised about.
Yeah, I would agree. 9:15, Tony Botello of Tony'sKansasCity.com is here for our featured Friday segment. Great website you got to go to for the real news here in Kansas City. We'll take a break, continue the conversation with him, get to the weather and the other happenings here in Kansas City next. 9:20 Feature Friday segment continues with our good friend Tony Botello of Tony'sKansasCity.com. You got to be reading him if you want the news, the actual news here in town. Kevin Keatsman just stopped by in the studio, and I guess I do have a way with getting grown men out of their basements. Between Kevin, who was doing and still is doing his very successful podcast, but now he's also doing radio for us here at 10 o'clock. And I'm getting you out of the basement to shower once in a while as well, Tony, so I'm 2 for 2.
Well, we were saying, I think you deserve a quick trip, either sponsorship or you got to wear the armband, that huge, gigantic armband that takes up your whole shoulder.
Like the Royals?
Yeah. Yeah, and so because we were both just doing Quick Trip before
I saved you guys.
That's right.
Saved you guys from your quick trips. You knowing the clerks and everything else. That's getting a little too much for me. So I've got to get you guys out and keep you busy. So speaking of going out and keeping busy, people in this town love to street race, and the mayor's trying to do something about it. But he's having a tough time, is he not? Where are we at with the street racing right now?
Right now, as of this week, Warnell, depending on what part of town you're from, is our new drag racing strip. And it's,
how's that possible with all the potholes on that freaking road?
They find a way. And there's been 2 crashes. One of them, the one on 85th, thankfully didn't prove fatal. What the news told us this week, and a lot. I'm getting a lot of reaction from the story. You had a 91-year-old guy and a 72-year-old woman. They weren't street racing. And unfortunately, killed in a crash. They apprehended one suspect. They're still looking for another. And I'm glad we mentioned it because they are out there. If anybody knows anything, it is like now's the time to call and maybe because a big thing in Kansas City. It goes along with our crime issues. People stealing cars. People will steal cars from Platte County. If you have a I don't know why anybody's buying a Dodge Charger. Because that is just, it's people wanting to street race, looking to steal your car and take it out and run around. And it's all fun. It's all great, Ferris Bueller's Day Off until, unfortunately, tragically, somebody gets killed. 2 people actually get killed.
Oh, man. And between that and the sideshows, the mayor's tried to do something about it. But if you're down 400 cops, you can't do the kind of patrolling you need to do to try to nip stuff like this in the bud early on when it's happening, right? This all ties back to me to being short-staffed in the police department. I don't know what else you can possibly do about it.
Rumble strips. I got rumble strips. I'm driving over rumble strips everywhere I go because I live near downtown, and we're trying to be nicer for the new year, right?
Yeah.
And so I think if we want to give Mayor Q some credit, it was really horrible a couple of years ago, 23, early part of 24, when the street races and the sideshow just took over downtown. Late summer, we didn't see that as much. So he was able to keep at least inside the loop secure.
Yeah.
And the rumble strips and redirecting police. Councilman Wes Rogers,
Northland guy, yeah.
Yeah, is putting on another ordinance trying to keep people to have 2 or 4 wheels on the ground. That's nice, but you're right. And the point that readers make and the excellent point that you make is that without enforcement, you can write as many declarations or resolutions or ordinances or letters from the Queen as you would like. If there's nobody around to enforce it, it doesn't really matter.
Someone mentioned his name, Wes Rogers, as maybe a mayoral candidate, possibly being the first ever Northland mayor.
I got a nasty note from Clay this morning.
Clay who? Chastain?
Yeah, our friend, our mutual friend, Clay Chastain.
I mean, unless Clay sends me parody songs, I don't want to hear it right now. I love him, but I don't want to hear it right now.
And that's my point. You stumped me the last time I was here. Wes Rogers is one. I think the front runner right now is Melissa Patterson Hasley. That's what insiders are saying. She's going to go Quinton's same route, just do one term on the council.
3rd district at large, same district as Quinton, right?
Yeah, and trying to take the same path. And again, we'd like to see her plans with crime, with development, with all the other issues that Kansas City is facing. The big social justice headline that's going to get support from the Star. It will get cookies and hugs from KCUR, maybe KMBC, is that she will be the first, if elected, she would be the first African-American female in Kansas City. And that's a push, that's a sell to our progressive friends in Midtown. I don't know that it matters to anybody else who is interested in crime, in street racing, in potholes, and in people giving away development money.
Well, she's got a DWI charge on her record, which seems to help you in this town if you want to run for mayor. I'm just saying.
It may be a rite of passage. I don't.
Hers were dropped as well. Just so everyone has the full story, just like somebody else's. I'm just going to throw that out there. I mean, might be a rite of passage, however you want to put it, right?
That is true. Consideration and convenient calls from congressmen. Uncles.
Yeah, well, she has been on the show, and she does seem certainly more moderate of all the people on the city council. She's not, at least she has not portrayed herself as some kind of major progressive. I don't think that's what Kansas City wants. I don't think that's certainly what Kansas City needs. But I don't know enough about her to know if that's really who she is or who she's kind of pretending to be for setting up, a future political run of that kind.
I hope not. But we talked last time we were here about Mayor Quinton's really quick turnabout. And yeah, the pandemic and the BLM riots had something to do with it. But we elected him as some guy who got along with police. And, and that was a quick 360.
Yeah, that was. All right. I want to ask you then also about these KC Star bonds, or Kansas Star bonds that obviously are getting a lot of attention. Speedway, they're getting a bunch over there, right? So what's going on there, and how do you think that plays in for the region?
Well, now this was just me, and I have to give credit where it's due. I can get behind, thanks to my readers, I can get behind the KC Biz Journal paywall because I'm not paying for that. But it's good info. It's really, really good info. If you should get a subscription, not me. Yeah. But they're 100. The story came out January 31st, 7:00, perfect timing. They're asking for, and you'll read more about this as the year goes on. They're asking for $155 million worth of Kansas Star bonds. This is the American Royal, the Kemper clan. And, they used to be in Kansas City. Mayor Sly gave them, gave them their walking papers, like we're not really subsidizing anymore. It used to be great to have the 4-H club walking around, the kids, our farming future all through downtown with the blue jackets. I don't know if that's worth $155 million. You could buy that same effect, get other different color jackets, and have a bunch of kids walking around talking about agriculture for way less than $155 million.
This is the great scam of the Star bonds. The whole attitude of the Kansas politicians, many Republicans, I will add, who I just totally disagree with on this, who will claim and say, well, it's not actually any taxpayer monies. It's never actual dollars. It's just basically additional sales tax revenues that are received from events that come to town. That's how they always frame it.
And yet, I don't want to go all Luigi here, but we are we're having the same problem. It's the same old problem in Kansas City, Missouri. Our mutual friend Patrick Toohey wrote a great column about J.E. Dunn via Port KC getting $20 million. And, it's just tax incentives. It's just money that you won't see.
Exactly. Not your money. It's just incentives.
That's right. And Blue KC, Blue Cross Blue Shield, to keep their headquarters downtown, they're getting another $20 million as well. So,
this is not the funny part, the sad part, really, but if I don't laugh, I'll cry about it. The average employee who's hoping they're not getting carjacked is like, well, at least the bosses, ownership is getting a $20 million abatement. so I can hopefully not get my car stolen on a Wednesday at 5 o'clock and get carjacked or whatever it might be. Hope it's worth it to you guys. I mean, it's really just it's terrible.
Yeah, no, it's I don't know. I mean, hopefully in Kansas City, I think in Kansas City we're going to see a lot of the same sentiment. Again, I'm not encouraging everybody to go Luigi, but maybe making fun of Cybertrucks.
Calling it out is all we need.
Exactly.
Tony Botello, Tony'sKansasCity.com. Go there for the news of what's happening in this town. We appreciate you, my friend. Stay warm and stay safe this weekend.
You as well. Thank you, Pete.
There you go. Tony Botello, Tony'sKansasCity.com.